Kuzangpo and welcome to People's Voice. I'm Jigmatile. Information is power and power is information. So in today's program, we are going to look at the Right to Information Bill of Bhutan 2013. Officials say it's not about whether Bhutan needs the Right to Information law or not. It has passed that stage and now it's about when and how. So let's look at how right is the Right to Information Bill of Bhutan 2013. In one of the Meet the Press sessions, the Prime Minister has said the bill is proving to be divisive. He said the bill is with the Legislative Committee and they would carry out several public consultations before it's being enacted.
We will assist the Legislative Committee in any form or manner that may be required, but we can't preempt their work. So if they require our assistance, our support, we will provide it, but like I said, it's up to them. What I can confirm is that we are receiving very extreme views.
As part of the public consultation, QED and Bhutan Development Forum organized a panel discussion on the Right to Information Bill on Friday. Let's look at what the panelists have to say on this.
RTI is very important. It is going to have a great impact in the country in every aspect, be it social, political, cultural. In every aspect, it is going to change the system of working in our government. It is overall, it is going to enhance transparency, accountability, keeping everyone on our toes, on their toes, including starting from the civil servants to the media to the politicians. Everything in the system is going to be improved. I have great hope from the bill. What I would like to caution about RTI is important. Yes, we need it, but we also need to put in place the things required, the infrastructure, the trainings for the information and media officers to equip themselves to handle the implementation of the Right to Information bill properly. And the feeling in general among the ministries and the agencies is also the same. Yes, we need the RTI. It is important. It will fix everything. It will improve the efficiency of the government, transparency of the system as a whole in the country. But please do not be swept away by the changes in other international or other nations, because we are entirely different. By this, I do not mean to defend or resist against this bill, but adequate infrastructure needs to be put in place, adequate human resource needs to be put in place, and adequate budget allocation needs to be done. If these things are in place, we, the Ministry of Information and Communication, as the administering agency, we are ready to go for it. But before that, everything needs to be put in place.
I will not go into too much of the technical aspects of that, but basically there are some fears and concerns especially from our bureaucracy right now. And I wouldn't say not only the bureaucracy, but also from our political class as a whole. And not from the opposition only, I would say from in the ruling government as well. The fear being that, is Bhutan ready for RTI? Will it create chaos? Will it create problems? Do we have the correct infrastructure or adequate budget? Are we prepared? And over here, I think first of all we have to see that the arguments are coming mainly from the political bureaucratic class. And in many countries, it is this category of powerful people who decides, including in Bhutan, everything about our lives, especially in Bhutan, where everything from the time you're born to the time you die, you depend on the government. The government hospitals, government schools, government jobs, even if you're in the private sector, government services. Especially in Bhutan, which is a kind of a welfare state, everything is government run. So I think the citizens here, we do have a right to know a little bit more about how we are being governed. And I think the political bureaucratic class, it is inherent in them not to share information. By instinct. By instinct, reporters like us, we want to find out more information. And by instinct, politicians and bureaucrats don't want to share information. So we are two extremes of the debate. But where is the mass? That goes back to my earlier points I've laid out, the rural areas, even the urban areas. We have to go by what they need. The RTI bill, the media is highlighting the RTI bill not because we need it in the media. To be very frank, I don't need the RTI bill, to be very frank. Most of us in the media, we don't need it. Because we have our contacts, we will get information. There are always, people unhappy in the system. And as long as we protect their identity, they will come to us with files, documents, everything. We just have to keep our doors open and our ears open. The RTI bill is essential for ordinary people, for the people in this country who don't hold public offices, who don't have a strong voice, who don't have powerful contacts. If you're a powerful businessman, you don't need RTI, to be very honest with you. Have a nice dinner Saturday or Sunday at your place, you call powerful people, everything is done. You know things way before people should know,
I look at, as far as RTI is concerned, I look at it through two questions. One is, are we ready? And that's been one of the most debated points. And the second question is, are we prepared? I think some people look at these two questions in the same manner, but I look at it quite differently. Are we ready? I think experts, RTI experts and legal experts from around the world, including some very illustrious ones who came to Bhutan and discussed on RTI, have said that any democracy is ready for an RTI Act. And one expert even said, no democracy is complete without an RTI Act. I think this has a lot of weight as far as I'm concerned. The second question is, are we prepared? Definitely no, we're not prepared. But just because we're not prepared in terms of infrastructure, in terms of human resources, do we scrap the very important bill that we have with us? Or do we delay it? I don't think so. We need to start somewhere. And we need to start with first drafting the bill and then putting it for discussion in Parliament. And then there's also debate on cost that an RTI Act will bring. I think when I think about the cost in terms of human resources, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of computerizing and computerizing information, government information, the cost of democracy comes to my mind. Just because this is going to be costly, do we scrap it? I don't think so. If you think in terms of cost, the democracy itself comes to mind. What about elections? How much are we spending on elections? What about the Anti-Corruption Commission? We're spending a lot on different agencies that promote democracy. And RTI Act and human resources needed for that and infrastructure needed for that could be one of the costs of democracy. I think that argument may be debatable, but I think the cost should not become an impediment to the implementation of an RTI Act.
Very interesting thing and very common, and also as a tolerant society, I think this act might become one of the paper tigers among the many we have. Because firstly, now the two questions I started with become relevant. Are we ready? Do we need RTI? So now, and also, are we prepared? Like Nirup Dzongkha pointed out, we are not prepared. And there are a lot of bureaucrats who say that we don't want it. And there are a lot of other people, other sections of people who say that the RTI Act is not relevant to Bhutan, because even the information that are accessible with the coming of RTI Act, the flow of information might get disrupted, because there are so many nitty-gritty things that bureaucrats who are custodians of information need to take care of. So now, when we are not able to solve all these nitty-gritty issues, then this act might become, even if it is endorsed, it might become another paper tiger. So maybe we will not mind, because we are so used to having many. But if it is to become so, should we waste time, resources, energy, infrastructure to institute it? Then I don't blame our bureaucrats. Now, according to this act, our bureaucrats have every reason to be defensive and not to give information to people who are asking for information, because if they are to give information, if they happen to give information, there are certain risks. Because the clauses which prohibit civil servants from giving information are very thin. And most of our civil servants may not be in a position to categorize which are the information that could be considered under classified, because it's very general.
If democracy is about everybody being equal, then and the government being a custodian on behalf of the people, where the sovereign power lies with the people, really, even if the numbers do not come out and people are asking too many questions, if a person has a question, why shouldn't it be a right for a person to seek the answer? And therefore, the mechanism to place the question at the appropriate place and how the response would be met with. We also talk about infrastructure. Are we ready or not? I think sometimes when we look at Thimphu and we think the whole of Bhutan is Thimphu, then that's where we have this misconception that we are not ready. If you go back to your village, what matters to a villager in that village is the information that is available in the village. So when you talk about technology, infrastructure, if a Gyeok Tsokde discusses an issue and they have a resolution there, and the people want to ask how the decision was reached, I don't see the need for the GUB to actually call up Thimphu or get an internet connection to Thimphu to get the information, because it's available in the Gyeok. Yes, I think in terms of people getting used to the idea of posing questions to the government or to the authority, that's a behavioral change and shift in attitude, and one which will take time and effort, because behavioral change cannot simply happen overnight. You will have to apply consistent effort over a period of time. And mind you, a transparent regime is not a static thing we are looking at. It's a work in progress. It will have to change. And as we go, we will encounter problems, and accordingly, we'll have to tweak our laws and policies, and things will have to improve that way. So it's a work in progress. So we'll not have a point of time where everything is ready. We are set to go. I mean, we may have done all the homework, infrastructure, the planning, everything, but by that time, if you have lost 1 year, at that point of time, things will have changed again. So we'll have to update our laws and policies again. So there's never going to be a time where it is perfect. We must go for it. Do we need RTI? Is it the right time? A few questions I would ask as a citizen. 2013 December, Royal Monetary, the central bank's monthly bulletin just said, our debt to GDP ratio just crossed the 100% mark. It's 104%. Our debt service ratio today stands at 215%, which means we import 215% more than what we export. Why has this happened? You and I consume more. Why do we consume? Because we can consume. And why can we consume? Some cannot consume, of course. It's because of policies and decisions of the government, which has a bearing on all of us, not just today, but for our future generations as well. Do we have questions in our mind? I obviously think we would. And if you wanted to ask this question, is it right? Do you think it's valid? Is it asking too much of the government and authorities? If we think this is a valid question, the government should feel responsible to respond. I think there's an answer in there. Are we ready for RTI? Do we need RTI today? There have been change in policies. You all know that the GEOC is going to get a 2 million every year now. This is a big change in how the local government financial decentralization is happening, which means our people in the villages, the local government is going to have a discretionary power over this 2 million, how it's used and distributed. Will our people in the villages want to ask questions just like we did about national debt, debt service ratio? If the question is yes, I think it also partly answers to our question, are we ready? Do we need RTI today?
The panel discussion also saw feedback on various clauses. Because of the time constraints, we are not able to bring you the discussion in full. However, the organizers said they would submit the feedback to the Legislative Committee of the Parliament. After the discussion, I caught up with the expert Venkatesh Nayak. Some of the panelists were raising concerns about political parties not included within the RTI ambit. So what do you have to say on this?
If you look at the RTI laws in the South Asian region, Nepal is the only country which actually includes political parties within the list of public bodies under their RTI law. All political parties have a similar duty to provide information to people directly, just like all other government offices. In India, there is a major demand now, there is a campaign going on for making political parties transparent directly to the people under India's RTI Act. But there is a lot of resistance to that from the political parties themselves. And I find that resistance rather difficult to understand. Political parties, by definition, are bodies that claim to represent people in parliament, and that is the basis on which their candidates get elected and make laws for the people to conform with. When our agents in parliament and their political parties tell the citizens that we will take your votes, we will take your donations, we will go and voice your concerns in parliament, but we will not be transparent to you, there is something rather illogical in that whole argument. I have looked at the constitution of Bhutan. There is a whole chapter on political parties in your constitution. Therefore, political parties are in theory and in practice bodies established by your constitution or under your constitution, whichever way you may want to interpret it. But for that very reason, and due to the fact that political parties are so central to democratic governance, because they are the primary agency through which individual citizens contest elections. The number of independents contesting elections is much lesser than the number of party candidates who contest on a party ticket. So today you may actually be able to run a democracy without a single civil society organization being anywhere within the country, but it is very difficult to run a democracy without a political party. So the centrality of political party to democratic governance cannot be denied. So when that is the position in which political parties find themselves, they cannot take the plea that they are just like any other private body and therefore do not have a responsibility to be directly transparent to the people. I think that is again illogical. So political parties must, of course, be transparent to the people directly. And of course, they have some legitimate concerns about certain kinds of sensitive information that they may have, which must not be made public so that their competitive position in the elections may be negatively affected. In such situations, the law can always provide legitimate exemptions to protect such interests. But to say that a political party of whatever kind should not be covered by the RTA Act itself at all is a huge contradiction of terms, because of the fact that, like I said earlier, political parties are central to the success of any representative democracy, and this is being seen all across the South Asian region and in other parts of the world.
One of the clauses in the bill is that the Ministry of Information and Communications will be the appellate body. So will there be not conflict of interest?
One ministry amongst the several ministries that are part of the government of Bhutan as an appellate body amounts to giving it the powers of becoming a super ministry. And I don't think the other ministries would be very happy with that situation. The question that is likely to be raised is why that ministry alone and why not some other ministries? The practice in Westminster style of democracies where the government is responsible and accountable to parliament, the understanding in law is that all ministries with their specific mandates are equal to each other. Nobody is higher than anybody else. So given that scenario, it may not be useful and it may not be worthwhile to make a ministry as the final appellate authority over all other appellate bodies before any person needs to go to court for demanding information. The demand that there must be an independent body for deciding on information access disputes is very legitimate, and for a very good reason. All information that government holds be it in this department or that department, those departments become interested parties. So they are likely to have a prejudiced view on the issue of whether certain kinds of information must be made public or not, because they are involved in that issue. Any access dispute, just like any other legal dispute, must be decided by an impartial body. In relation to other legal matters, it is the courts which perform this function. In relation to information access disputes, these matters are handled by information commissions that are autonomous from the government. They have their own staffing, they have their own independence in terms of financing, which is approved by Parliament and not so much by the government. So in such a situation, it is possible to decide in an impartial and non-prejudicial manner as to what information must be made public to promote the public interest and what information need not be made public in order to protect the public interest. And that's, I think, the reason why there is immense value in having an independent information commission. However, if you think resources are a constraint in terms of creating a new body for the purpose of deciding on disputes of access to information in Bhutan, you can give those powers to an existing commission, like for example the Anti-Corruption Commission. Because a lot of information requests that will come to you, as experience indicates in India, they will be about spending of government money. And in many instances, it will be actually shown that either money was being spent without proper authorization, or there might have been some sort of mismanagement of funds, or like in India, there might be rampant corruption. So in order to prevent such situations, it would be ideal to have the Anti-Corruption Commission, apart from doing its anti-corruption work, could also be tasked with the responsibility of deciding or adjudicating information access disputes. So then you will not be expanding your bureaucracy, you will be not creating another white elephant, you only need to give some additional resources to such a body so that it can perform the functions of a dispute resolution mechanism. And you could empower them in the law under RTI. They do not have to depend upon their parent law, which is the anti-corruption law, for powers to decide in RTI disputes. In fact, the RTI Act itself can empower them with special powers for looking into matters of appeals and complaints from citizens. So this is doable as a cost-effective measure.
There should be a reason for the people to ask for information. Yes. So do you not think that this is something that is not required in principle, actually? People should, why should have people reason to ask for information?
Absolutely. I think the only reason that is acceptable for seeking information in a democracy is that every citizen is an equal stakeholder of the democracy. If we agree with the definition of democracy, which is commonly known, that is, democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then people have the right to seek information about everything that government does. So therefore, there should be no doubt about the fact or that citizens have the right to ask information, and it should not be made conditional to giving reasons as to what they want to do with the information, why they want the information. There is another argument here. Right to information is as much a fundamental right as the fundamental right to life, the fundamental right to health, the right to education, the right to continue to pursue one's religious beliefs, the right to hold opinions, the right to join political parties, freedom of association, freedom of movement. Now, you do not really require reasons for exercising any of these other fundamental rights. It would be rather idiotic to go and ask somebody, why does he or she want to exercise the fundamental right to live? You don't really need to explain to somebody, why do you want to have the right to health? Obviously, I want to remain healthy. I want to perform as a human being to my fullest potential. So similarly, exercising the right to information, that is, right to access information from public bodies, does not require a reason, simply because all those public bodies exist for serving the citizen and not for any other reason. Therefore, reasons are not important. The test should be, in an RTI law, which kinds of information can be disclosed, and which kinds of information, if disclosed, will harm the public interest, and therefore there is no duty to disclose. That alone should be the test, and not the reasons for seeking information, which any citizen may be compelled to give, because that would amount to a violation of their fundamental right, in my opinion.
One of the many concerns that people raise is that there are no mechanisms in place to implement this, if at all this RTI bill is passed. So from your experience, what are the mechanisms that the government should put in place before this RTI bill is passed?
There are certain kinds of investments that are required for implementing the RTI Act, but they are not too heavy. And creatively, solutions have been found across the globe for ensuring easy access to information to people. Now, if you look at the investment side, investing on photocopier machines to make copies of documents and give them to people may be a huge investment. But there is an easier way of doing this whole job of giving access to information to people. Simply declare a specific day in a week or even half a day in a week as an open government office day. Inform people in advance every week as to which day it would be, what are the hours during which people can visit the office, make a request for inspecting any document free of cost, put it before them, and of course at the same time ensuring that the record will be preserved safely and securely and it will not be destroyed. When you do that, you really are not spending any money. An existing officer is making access to an existing file available to a citizen at absolutely no expenditure. And the citizen who wants to inspect the file can make a set of notes that he or she wants. And if they want a copy of the document that is already there, then the file could be sent to the photocopier machine for copying the relevant pages if they can be disclosed. So actually solutions exist to ensure implementation of the transparency regime in a very low cost and low technology manner, but at the same time, because we are a progressive society with progressive vision, and we are increasingly in our South Asian countries going towards e-governance, where computers, digital information are the methods by which data is created, generated, stored, and used. It would be very, very convenient once the e-governance initiatives are fully implemented. Information can be shared by the public information officer, or as you call him, the information and media officer in Bhutan, simply at the click of a button. No extra investment is required. What is important is to ensure that there is a mindset change from secrecy to that of transparency. That is a bigger challenge in my point of view, based on the experience that we've had when we looked at and when we participated and advised in the process of implementation of RTI laws in India, other South Asian countries, and elsewhere in the Commonwealth where we work.
Another interesting clause in the RTI Bill 2013 is the time frame of getting the information. From 14 days, you can go to 30 days and 90 days. So don't you think that it's too long a period to get information? For instance, if I need information instantly, and if it, according to law, if it takes 14 days, that's too long a period to get information. So what do you have to say on this?
I believe that any information request that a person would like to make, it must be presumed that the person wants the information immediately. Nobody would plan to ask for information 6 months down the line by filing a request 6 months earlier. Information that is not delivered in a timely manner is most likely to be useless to the seeker. So therefore, I would suggest that all efforts must be made in Bhutan. It is not a very large country of the size of, let's say, India or Pakistan, or even to that extent Bangladesh. But I do understand the terrain is quite difficult here. So perhaps rather than allow too many extensions to the disclosure of information, the deadlines need not be extended so much. At the most, you could give a one-time extension, particularly for those kinds of information that are voluminous in nature or require a lot of time for searching up and putting them together so that photocopies could be made. This issue also links up with another central point relating to the information access regime, and that is the preparatory work that needs to be done to ensure that government files and records are properly maintained, easily accessible in a physical way, to make decisions of disclosure when people make their information requests. So it is not just the methods of dissemination of information, it's also a question of ensuring that records are properly maintained, easily accessible, easily retrievable, so that, and that is part of the bill already in Bhutan, that information must be managed in such a manner that it facilitates the right to information of every citizen of Bhutan. So I think it is possible to tackle this issue of people's access by looking not only at the methods of dissemination, but also by ensuring proper records maintenance and management. And if all of these can be linked to the digital services network, then I think a lot of convenience can be created, not just for the citizens, but also for public bodies which are engaged, because whatever information they put in the public domain for citizens, they are themselves going to use it for their own future work. So it has a double benefit for the public bodies to go digital And at the same time, I do understand a lot of investment is required to ensure that people have access or easy access to information centers which are computerized, and that is a futuristic aspect of the right to information, and I believe that there is a lot of donor support for this kind of work, and it should not be too difficult for Bhutan to come up with a program for ensuring internet connectivity and access to its people, because that's already being done in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in India, and many other regions across the globe. So one is to think futuristically, but at the same time provide for short-term solutions where people don't have to wait for 10 years for internet connectivity in their village. It still can be done through low-cost, low-technology means of the kind that I mentioned earlier.
And in the information bill, Right to Information Bill 2030, there are also so many exemption clauses.
Yes.
What do you have to say on that? Do you agree?
I think the list of exemptions could be trimmed down. Certain kinds of exemptions are overbroad. Some of them are vague. For example, one of the exemption clauses says that in the interests of continuing the administration of the state, an officer can deny access to any information. Or it also says that the public authority can deny access to information from any organization that they may receive, including international organizations and foreign governments. Now, these are overbroad exemptions. I think it is absolutely crucial for the Parliament in Bhutan to connect the exemptions in the RTI bill with the exceptions to fundamental rights mentioned in the Constitution. And if there is a need to have a longer list, there must be sufficient justification which is based on public consultation and people's desire to ensure protection for such information. It should not be left simply to the whims and fancies of public authorities as to what information would be exempt and what would not be exempt. So to that extent, I think a greater deal of public consultation is necessary to look at the necessity of all the exemptions. Quite a few of them are necessary because they are standard exemption clauses found in other RTI laws. Some of them are overbroad. The language could be tightened to ensure that they are very narrowly interpreted. And some of the exemptions, I think, could be omitted from the bill because there are other exemptions which take care of those interests. And when you keep the whole exemptions clause tighter, this principle, which is the underlying principle of any right to information law, which is presumption of transparency, presumption of openness, and exceptions allowed only in a very narrowly defined set of circumstances. That could be achieved, and any good RTI law should be based on this principle.
There's also a whole chapter on fees. Now, the interesting thing is that to have access to information, you have to pay a certain amount.
Yes.
For instance, people living in rural areas, if they don't have money to get the information, then you are indirectly saying that you are denied an information. So what is the experiences in other countries,
Yes, in fact, you quite rightly pointed out the costs of seeking information. Solutions have been found in different countries in different ways. For example, in India, the Indian RTI Act says that anybody who is a citizen living below the poverty line identified by the government for other purposes like subsidy programs and all that, if you live below the poverty line and your name is on that particular list of people below the poverty line, you will get information free of charge. So that way there is no cost to you except maybe going and filing the information request yourself. In other countries in the West, what they have done is information that has a huge public interest value. For example, information relating to the environment, public health, public safety, public order. These kinds of information are proactively disclosed, and whenever somebody comes and asks for that information, they are given free of charge because they affect a large segment of society and not just individual interests. So there are a variety of solutions that could be used in order to overcome the problem of fees. But I would also want to add to what I've said till now, that the fee-related provision in your bill is not all that bad. It specifically says that only the cost of production of information, which is either photocopying charges or CD copying charges, only that will be collected from an applicant.
Do you think that that is really necessary?
Well, it all depends upon the financial situation in which Bhutan finds itself. There are countries in like Sweden and Norway where up to a certain limit all information is provided free of charge. Only when it is voluminous information or will require a lot of time to be spent on putting the information together from different sources, then a charge is put on the requester. So it's for Bhutan to decide whether it would like to give information free of charge to everybody. There is an easy way of doing that. Rather than wait for people to file an information request and then take the trouble of providing access to information in the form of photocopies or CDs or flash drives, if all information can be put up on websites directly, and if the media and CSOs and let's say academia could get involved in publicizing amongst the people what kinds of information are already available online, so a formal request need not be made. So in such situations, the cost of reaching access of information to people would be that much inexpensive compared to this whole process of somebody coming and filing a request and then you processing it and then handing over the information after collecting money from the applicant. So that could be avoided, and ultimately it is a political choice that Bhutan will have to make whether it would like to provide access to information completely free of charge to its people, or whether a nominal charge which will cover only the reproduction charges will be collected from the people.
How good is the RTI bill of Bhutan 2013? I'm asking you this because since you have given so many technical advices and support to many developing and developed countries, and you know in and out of RTI, right to information.
Okay, this morning somebody was commenting on the latest version of the RTI bill as being half-baked. I would very respectfully disagree with that view. I would say it is 3/4 baked, which means a lot of progressive features have already been incorporated in the bill. Best practice principles that are internationally recognized as to what a good RTI law should have are already there in the bill of Bhutan. What is necessary is to iron out some of the other difficult areas which were discussed extensively today. For example, having an independent and impartial body that would decide on information access disputes, removing the necessity of compelling citizens to give reasons for seeking information, having a slightly different manner of imposing penalties for unreasonable refusal of access to information. Rather than take it to courts, let the power be given to that independent body. And also reducing the size of the list of exemptions. I think if those things are done, I'm sure that the RTI bill of Bhutan, when it is enacted by Parliament, it would certainly join the ranks of the RTI laws in the top 10 countries in the world, which are said to be some of the strongest of laws on the planet.
Do you think that it needs more consultation before it goes to the Parliament?
I think some of the difficult provisions which I already pointed out do require extensive consultation. But at the same time, there is a need to strike a balance between how much of perfection you want in your law and whether the time that has come for passing this law should be made best use of, and you bring in a reasonably good law and not wait for the perfect law. Now that actually is a political choice. I think any law, and not just a right to information law, must be made on the basis of extensive public consultation. Every law should be made on the basis of public consultation. Time should be given for people to comment on the clauses of a draft bill that the government wants to bring to Parliament. This is standard practice in countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. Bills are put in the public domain several months in advance for people to comment. All those comments are compiled. Government then takes a view on those things, incorporates what it thinks are reasonable and practical, and then once again puts the bill in the public domain so that people can discuss and debate the contents. I think that's a procedure that to some extent has happened in India, and it has had a multiplier effect on other lawmaking exercises in other departments. Bhutan could also think of having a similar consultation exercise in Bhutan, because the advantage of doing a consultation exercise is not simply to have a strong RTI law. When people are involved centrally in the making of a law, they will also rise to its defense. They will defend it from being curtailed. Now the RTI Act in India, the government of the day wanted to curtail it on several occasions because it was quite uncomfortable with the extent of transparency that people were demanding, and very legitimately. But whenever the government tried to bring in amendments to the RTI Act, people came out on the streets. Civil society organizations mobilized public opinion, and the government and even lawmakers who were seriously considering amendments to the RTI bill were forced to take the back foot. So I think public consultation has two benefits apart from several others. The first one is ensure that everybody knows what the law is all about and get their views reflected in the law, and also make people as the very defenders of that law. And that, I think, is the way any democracy should progress from being representative in nature to becoming participatory in nature.
That was Venkatesh Nayak, a RTI expert from India. It is not sure whether the bill will be passed in the upcoming session of the Parliament or not. If at all passed, how? From the People's Voice team, thank you for watching us.